If you're not going to say, hit the road. This past summer, I went trying to do some bucket list type things. I had went and visited my brothers and sisters. I have 6 brothers and sisters that live in Oklahoma City area, and then I have another brother and another sister that live other places. But anyway, I can get a lot of the family visited at one time. And then on the way back, the bucket list was go to the Creation Museum and to the Ark exhibit. And I'm going to talk something about that experience today, although I can't cover all of that was there. It's a really great experience. If you haven't been, you need to go. They're within about 25, 30 minutes of each other, and you can get 1 3-day pass for both, and so you can see both off of that thing. Now, creationism says God created everything from nothing, and that's what I believe. That's what you believe. Evolution says 2 + 2 is 4, except every billion years or so, and then it's no longer 4. They have convinced us that time can change natural things that never change. But if you give it long enough, something will happen. They don't know exactly what, but something's got to happen, and 2 and 2 is not 4. And I'm here to tell you, 2 and 2 is 4 today, tomorrow, and 10 billion years from now. And so are all the other natural things the way that they occur. They don't change. Creationism says God spoke the universe into existence. I believe that. God didn't tell us exactly how he did it, other than he spoke it into existence. We wouldn't understand it if he told us, okay? So there is no reason. The book is not about how, but why. Evolution says either the Big Bang, which the Big Bang theory has been around for a long time. It was very, very popular, but here lately it's starting to kind of go out into unpopularity, and now they have what they call the spontaneous expanded universe. It all begins, though, with E = mc². That's energy equals matter times the speed of light squared. That's what that is right there. And so that's, if you'll recall from school, speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. Well, you square that, that means you multiply 186,000 by 186,000. Let's see, carried on. 345,960 billion. So you take the amount of matter that you want to turn into energy, and you multiply that times this 345,960 billion, and then you get energy from that. Part of this theory is energy can't be created or destroyed. It can change form. And matter is just another form of energy. Now, think about the time that we took matter and we changed it into energy. Think about the bomb that we did over Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in World War II. These bombs were a couple of tons in weight, but only 0.007 grams of uranium-235 actually underwent fission, and that created all the extra power of the bomb, even though there was 141 pounds total of U-235. Now, how big is 0.007? Now, this is not 007 type stuff, okay? But how big is this gram? That big. It's the size of a paperclip. Okay, that's how much matter was used to create the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. And if you go out and look on the internet and you see that huge explosion and all the destruction it was creating, taking this much matter and turning it into energy that did that. Now, evolution says the Big Bang took pure energy and created the universe. Scientists say, I got to catch up here, don't I? Yeah. Scientists say that we only see 5% of the mass of the universe. 5%. But how much is that? I'm glad you asked that question. I love it when you ask questions. 33 octillion, trillion pounds of ordinary matter. That's 5% of the universe. So go back to E equals mc squared. If you reverse the bomb's energy that destroyed Hiroshima, you get a paperclip worth of matter. Take all that energy, reverse it, you get one paperclip. How much energy is it going to take to create the part of the universe that we can see? The only 5% that we're talking about. It takes 10 to the 72nd power to create enough energy to create this trillion pounds. Now, what does that mean? Well, I kind of like visuals, okay? So here's your visual right here, folks. The human civilization, the annual global energy use. All the people, all the building, everything that's used every year in the world is that top one. Then you've got 1 second of the sun's output. That's the second one down. Then you've got the sun's total lifetime output. Then you've got a typical supernova. That's when a sun blows up, okay? And then this bottom one is a Big Bang. That's the observable universe mass energy. That says it's 10 to the 66. That's 10 with 66 zeros after it. And they want me to believe that they took that way back when there was enough energy that came from somewhere and interacted and blew up and created the universe, the 5% that we could see. I've never blown up anything and created something. Now, if that worked, where I could take an old pickup truck and I could blow it up and get a new pickup truck, well, you'd be hearing little booms going off everywhere around us all the time. Somebody'd be blowing something up. But all you're going to get when you blow something up is a mess. That's it. That's all you get. Now, this 10 with the 66 zeros after it is in joules. And I said, what's a joule? You guys are on a roll with the questions. Tell you what. A joule is the amount of energy it takes to lift an apple 10 centimeters. Well, what's a centimeter? A centimeter is about 0.3937 inches. So 10 of them is almost 4 inches. So this joule has been around a long, long time. If somebody's going to take an apple and say, let's see if I raise it up, that created that much energy. That's how much energy it took. By the way, the other part of the universe, they say, is made up of dark energy, 68 to 70%, and then you got dark matter, 26 to 27%. You can't see it, but they figure it's there. They got to come up with something that's going to fill up the rest of this 95% of the universe. You start with a theory that is flawed from the beginning, the whole theory is flawed. Now, the other one gaining popularity, they seem to think, I guess, it's easier to understand or easier to accept. But this is where the universe just expanded. It says that they took an extremely dense, extremely tiny bit of matter in the whole universe and expanded. Now, how dense was it? It has to have 33 octillion, trillion pounds of ordinary matter, as well as the other 95% compressed into a space the size of a proton. Now, this little bitty proton, you can't see a proton. But this thing is floating around out there somewhere in space all by itself. And it just decided to expand. Well, it must have been getting crowded inside that proton with that 33 octillion trillion pounds of ordinary matter. But how much energy does that take to expand? Well, now that takes 10 to the 113th joules times meters cubed, or 10 with 133 zeros, joule meter cubed, or 10 with 133 zeros after it. 133. I can't even come up with what that number is. Right. I mean, after trillion and quadrillion and sextillion, I mean, I just run out of what tillions I'm in. So you've got 113. Wow. And they say that's roughly 78 zeros after it, greater than the energy at a supernova's core. Greater than a star blowing up, it's 7810 with 78 zeros after it, greater than that. And then they say, that's almost beyond human comprehension. And I say, almost? Almost, huh? I think when we look at the universe, it's very well organized. Everything works exactly the way it's supposed to work, and it works that way all the time. Yes. I don't care how many years it's been going. Our planet, very well organized. It operates with natural laws. It would be a truly beautiful place if it wasn't for people. It's much harder for me to believe an explosion somehow created anything other than a mess. Amen. Have you ever seen anything get blown up to create something? I haven't. Now, every major civilization that left any record of themselves left a flood story. All over the world. And the story's pretty consistent. You've got one family, a boat, and the boats are different kinds. Sometimes it's a canoe, you know, but anyway, and it's different people's names are on there, but there's always a flood story. The whole world flooded. And there's always a god or gods involved in these other stories. Just like in our story, our God is involved. This kind of gives an example of the different places around the world where there has been a flood story come out of it. Now, what would cause after a flood, what are you going to have? You're going to have a lot of water, of course. But this is where we have the most fossils in the world. This is particularly interesting to me because this is a Butte pit, Red Butte and Cedar Mountain. Two different places that scientists will tell you was formed by a flood. These huge, big mountains, they're flood material, complete. Cedar Mountain obviously made up of a lot of trees, cedar trees, but they don't equivalent to the Great Flood, an earth swap, the whole earth flood. They think it was a local flood that somehow built these two mountains. Quite a flood. But if you look at what this says, these places that I gave you on the my first slide, in China, you've got up to 50,000 fossils per square meter. That's a 10 by 10 in our feet. Yeah. 10 by 10 has got 50,000 fossils in it. Then if you go over here to the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, Canada, it's got millions of specimens for quarry. Green River Formation in Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, hundreds per square meter in laminate. La Brea tar pits, they found 3.5 million fossils from a few acres in the La Brea tar pit. Hill Creek Formation, hundreds of individuals per bed. Missile pit in Germany, thousands of articulated skeletons. That just means you can see where the joints were, if it was articulated. An animal that goes out in the woods right now and dies does not turn into a fossil. Why not? Because it's not buried, it's not compressed, it's just out there, and nature takes care of it. What would bury cause 50,000 fossils per square meter? A flood. Now, why are these spread out all over the world? Because if you've got a worldwide flood, you're going to have eddies and flows and currents and different things, and there's going to be some places where more of the animals and the other things are going to gather. That's just a normal thing in a river, in any water, in a lake. And don't let anybody tell you that there's not enough water to make this happen. You couldn't have worldwide flood because there ain't enough water on the earth. You got all the oceans and you lowered the land. You couldn't, yeah. But you're forgetting about all the water that's in the land, underground. If you took all the water that's under the ground in the world and put it all on top, how much land would still be visible? None. It would be 2 miles deep. From the surface of the water to the top of the mountain would be 2 miles if you took all the water that's in the earth and put it on top. So don't let anybody tell you that there couldn't have been a flood. Now, this is not an actual ark, and please, ladies, try to overlook the beautiful man in the front.
Is that Noah?
That's Noah. This is a building. It's not a real ark. It's built on the dimensions of an ark, okay? And this is the front. You can't really tell it, but it's got kind of a rudder type thing in the front. And this is the back. And you see this rudder in the back there. This is not the kind of rudder like we have on today's boats, because it's not going to steer it. Right. It's going to keep it stable. And that's what this kind of rudder was used for. This is a picture along the side of it. Who remembers how big the ark was? 300 cubits long, 510 or 15, 16 feet. I got it written somewhere, I forgot. But anyway, it's big. It's great big. This is just an idea of what they did when they were putting together massive size of beams. This is looking up from the third bottom up toward the top, the third, second, and first floor up there. Now the Ark exhibit also has cages and room for all the animals. Studies from 2012 estimate there have been 1,400 extinct and still alive kinds of land-based animals. Now that's not all, you might have that many different dogs and cats, today, but it doesn't matter because one dog, one cat has enough in the DNA to have the different kinds. As long as they're capable of breeding, they've got all the information there. So you can have one kind of canine and get fox and a wolf and, a dog and all those things out of it. So all it had to have was enough to handle the 1,400. if you figure you've got 2 of each kind of unclean animal and 7 pairs of each kind of clean animal, and sometimes we forget that's what happened. He didn't just take them all 2 by 2 in there. He took 7 pairs of clean animals. And by the way, who told him what was clean, what was dirty? God did, obviously, but it's not recorded anywhere.
Yeah, we don't know what the clean is.
No, I have no idea. But that's a total of 6,744 animals on board. The ark is also based on the royal cubit. Now, the cubit, as you know, from here to here, okay? But you'd have to have a standard. If you're building something big like that, you've got to have a standard. You can't have each guy going around taking his own cubit. You got a big guy and a little guy. Well, whatever you build is going to be a little wumpy jawed, you know. It ain't going to be standard. It ain't going to be square. So you've got a standard. Well, the standard for the common cubit was 17.5 to 18 inches. The standard for the royal cubit was 20.5 inches. The ark is built on that standard, the royal cubit, 20.4 inches. Measures 510 feet long, I know I had it written somewhere, 85 feet wide, and 51 feet tall. Like I said, you got to have a standard if you're going to set it. Now, people ask, well, what about them big old dinosaurs? Well, on this, they had a dinosaur area where they could romp and play and just do whatever they wanted to in their own area there. Okay? So you've got that.
You don't have to bring adults.
You don't have to bring adults.
You can bring young ones.
That's right. And how long did it take them to grow? Well, an alligator today grows a foot for a year for the first 5 or 6 years, and then it slows down. And alligators are reptiles. They think most dinosaurs were reptiles. I think they were both reptiles and mammals. But anyway, I'm not going to argue with them on that. But the reptiles are slow growers. So you bring some babies with you, and you got them. Now, when I read that man is mentioned, anytime man is mentioned in the Bible, and it doesn't tell me how big he was, I kind of see somebody my size. But that doesn't mean that's the way it is. You got the royal cubit, which is 20.4 inches, creates the ark. But how big a man would that be? Hold that thought, because I ain't going to tell you right now. I got some different slides. We're back to the cages. Here's a cage of the bear kind. Then you got big cages on board. You got medium cages on board. And for those of you in the Wednesday night class who did not get to see this slide, you got little bitty cages on board. They got to see another medium-sized cage slide. Operator error somewhere. Now, science would point out to you that primitive man, how he lived in caves, how he had to learn to do everything through trial and error, maybe banded together for safety. How many years passed between Adam and Eve being kicked out from the garden and the flood? According to the Masoretic text, 1,656 years. Now, if you look at the Septuagint, it's over 2,000 years. But we're going to say 1656. How many people were on the earth at the time of the flood? Well, let's just be conservative and say women lived to be 800. Today we consider the years a woman lifespan, she can have children, is 37% of her lifespan. So if you're living to 800, that's 296 years. Let's say they only gave birth for 200 years, have a baby every 5 years, and only have an average of 15 children. Anybody got a guess on how many people? Can you say that number? So let's make some changes. Let's say they only have 5 children, they're 40 years apart. Approximately 13 million people. Some other folks figured if they only had 1.1% growth per year, you'd have had 147,551,000 508 people at the time of the flood. 1.2% growth gives you that number. 1.3% gives you 3 billion. 1.4% would give you 19,947,270,231 people. That's based on population growth statistics. Now, some things we don't know: infant mortality, actual average age people live to. We just know about the guys that live 800-900 years. Was everybody doing that? I figure they were. How much disease influenced them? Murder. Apparently they're pretty evil going along, so I figure they're just killing each other. No matter how you want to count it, the number of people who were living at the time of the flood is a staggering number. Do you think all these folks lived in a cave? There had to be societies formed. There had to be towns, cities, governments, everything we see today and more. And how about how smart were they? How smart do you think pre-flood people were? How much could you learn if you could live for 800 or 900 years? Well, I might even be smart by that time. Thomas Edison is credited with how many patents? 1,093 U.S. patents. How much could he accomplish if he lived 800? There's another fellow, Eratosthenes, back in the 3rd century BC, 300 years before Jesus. He calculated the circumference of the earth to within 1%. Within 1%. I do have a point in all of this. Even though we don't believe in evolutionary theory, we have been influenced heavily in our thinking by it. God had Moses tell his story of creation, not for how he did it, but why he did it. Everybody around him 5,000 years ago, every culture, every little town would build a building for their God, whichever God they were worshiping. And in hopes that their building would be nice enough and fancy enough, when their God came walking through the area, he'd stop and stay there. Say, oh, that's a pretty nice digs over there. I'll just stay here a while. And when he did, that's when they had everything good. The babies were born healthy, crops were great, fishing was awesome, whatever. Everything was good. And that's because their God was living in their temple. Our God built a temple for us. He didn't make us build him a temple. He built a temple for us. How big was the ark? We know it was 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide. Don't really know what a cubit was in Noah's day, but we're going to figure it had to be at least that big. Noah could have been a great big fella. He could have been something else. Yeah, you can't read all that, I know, but I got to hurry up. A common cubit makes a man 6'2". A royal cubit makes a man 7'1". So you think they were all little bitty?
They were all pennies.
They're all penny size, weren't they? They were pennies. Kind of messes up the idea that we were swinging in the trees one day and chimp looked at the other chimp and said, "Woo, I'm getting tired of hanging around up here." And he jumped down and started walking around, and he became a man, little bitty, 3-foot-tall man. If it's 6'2" and 7'1", that's really not it. I want to hit the Grand Canyon myth real quick. In 1883, a fellow by the name of John Hance moved into the canyon. Now, he was the first white boy that lived in the canyon, all right, that we know of. He's a colorful personality. He was a great explorer and guide for people. Children loved him. When asked how the canyon came to be, he'd simply say, "I dug it." One day, a 4-year-old girl asked him in a breathless whisper a question that nobody else had ever asked him. In awe, she looked at him and said, "What did you do with all the dirt?" He was dumbfounded. He couldn't come up with an answer. He didn't even have a smart aleck answer for her. Just on his deathbed, he whispered to the people, his waiting friends, "Where do you suppose I could have put that dirt?" How much dirt are we talking about? 800 cubic miles of material were removed to create the canyon. It should be at the end of the Colorado River where it flows into the Gulf of California. Not even 1% of that amount is there. One last lesson from our experience with Mount St. Helens explosion. You all remember that. It's called the Little Grand Canyon. It's 140 feet deep, 1,000 feet wide, and 2,000 feet long. Another canyon, Step Canyon, formed by a separate mud flow, reached a depth of 600 feet. Lewitt Canyon was also formed through hard basalt rock to a depth of over 100 feet. Lava Canyon was formed by 1980 eruption. 4 significant canyons formed within hours by mud flows. The Little Grand Canyon formed in 8 hours. Not 80 million years, 8 hours. That canyon was formed because when Mount St. Helens erupted, you had all the heat, all the lava, melting the snow, it's all combining, and you have this huge amount of muddy water, which sand is really sandy. I mean, when it hits something, it will bore a hole in it, and in 8 hours, it created the Little Grand Canyon. I'm through. I'm out of time, but as last thing I want to tell you, if you're interested at all in this topic, I would suggest you look at this book. It's called In the Beginning by Walt Brown, PhD. It's also online. You can go out there and look for the PDF version, which is out there, and you can read it for free. You can download it if you got enough paper, because it's a big book. But I really enjoyed this book. It was not an overnight read. It will take you a little while to get through it. But God bless you. Have a great week. Thank you.